It all started off the back of COVID. At the peak, the group of us were buying 1,000 pairs of shoes a week. We went from shoes to PlayStations to watches to cars, then holidays, then planes.
So Ed, how do you build a reselling business from nothing? Ed Somner Bogard, it's fantastic to have you on the show at the boardroom. We're going to talk about your exciting career so far. So Ed, you run a company called EMJ Exclusive. Can you talk me briefly through what it does?
Yeah, so essentially we look after ultra high net worth, high profile people, doing anything from property moves, so removals, all the way up to private jets, everything in between, holidays, insurance, cars, furnishing, etc., making sure they get a good deal. So we might have a client come to us and say, I want these 5 watches, I've just sold my business, I want to give them to my business partners, so we'll go and find them rare watches with certain coloured dials. We might book someone a whole holiday, so they might book a villa, a private jet and a yacht all in the space of a week or two. We'll sort all of that out, everything in between, chefs, restaurant bookings, etc. We'll do cars in the UK, insurance for the cars, furnish people's houses, move them from house to house. We'll do pretty much anything as long as it's legal.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So how did you get there? And can you tell us your story?
Yeah. I mean, well, so look, it all started off the back of COVID and selling shoes, essentially. So heading into COVID, I was in my last year of sixth form, so doing A-levels, and I had an apprenticeship lined up to go into wealth management, and then COVID happened, and that kind of screwed everything up, as you can probably imagine. And at the time, me and a friend of mine were selling a few pairs of shoes a week just to kind of like be able to go out and have a bit of money whilst we're at school. And as COVID started and everything sort of got interesting, we sort of looked at it and realised that, you know, if you buy a pair of shoes from Nike for 150 quid and can sell it for 300 quid, then it's actually not a bad business. You've just got to be able to do it quite a lot of times. So what that led into was us using software to buy shoes. So at the peak, the group of us were buying like 1,000 pairs of shoes a week at the peak, which was a weird lifestyle. But we were buying shoes in like Bulgaria, Australia, the US. I mean, we were buying them literally everywhere and just instantly selling them. And that was, look, it was fun whilst it lasted, but at some point the music was going to stop on that, right? Because it was a sort of inflated demand caused by COVID, essentially, and everyone being a bit bored and everyone getting really into trainers, right? And what happened was when the PlayStation 5 came out, which was just insane. I mean, they basically couldn't make enough PlayStations for like 2 years to actually satisfy demand. And what happened was we ended up with quite a lot of them because we ended up, basically I know where every single Tesco in the UK is because we bought PlayStations from every single Tesco in the UK pretty much, other than like Wales. But what happened was we then had a big games company that had promised loads of footballers PlayStations that Sony then clearly didn't have enough to give them. And they then contacted us to supply the PlayStations to them. And off the back of that, we then got into the football world. Through the football world, we got into basically everyone else, YouTubers, high net worth, etc. And then from there, just sort of got into private aviation. So
Wow.
It was a bit of a, look, you know, we went from shoes to PlayStations to watches to cars, then holidays, then planes. So it's been a bit of a weird sort of, it's been a weird few years, but it's your sort of classic shoes to planes story.
Well, let me. There's so many of those shoes to plane stories.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Well, it started with necessity because you needed to do something because your career plan was blocked by COVID.
Yeah.
So it started with necessity, and then you spotted an opportunity because you're making a bit of money, sort of pocket money, as you just say it, out of buying and selling shoes. Mm-hmm. There's probably a naughty side in there that people may not like when you were buying all those shoes with a bot, presumably.
Yeah.
And stopping people who want to get one pair being able to buy them. Is that a fair criticism on the early?
Yeah. Look, I mean, we ended up with a community of like 150,000 people that were sort of in that world. There was a thing called Botmart, and still is, that had 150,000 people in it at the peak. I think there was basically the biggest community. It was on a thing called Discord. It was the biggest community for sort of reselling shoes. Yeah, look, there's an element of where people will go, look, I wanted these shoes, you've inflated the price, but sort of high-end shoes are not a necessity, right? We weren't reselling medicine or COVID masks or anything that was actually like you intrinsically needed, right? And it was a market. It's no different to someone walking into a Rolex shop, buying a Submariner and then selling it, buying Submariner for $8,000 and selling it for 10 on the sort of grey market.
Well, it's a little bit, the volume's a little bit different, isn't it, buying?
But it's the same thing. I mean, it's not like, it's not like we were forcing people not to wear shoes, right? It was this is the top percentile of the shoe market. You're talking about shoes that would go for like £1,000, right? It's not and the sort of status. I think quite a lot of the people that wanted those shoes, it's a status thing, right? Almost like I've got the new Dior Jordans that are going for $8,000, right? It's not. You don't need an $8,000 pair of Jordans, right? So. Well, I'm sure some people would argue you do, but
so it's people. If you can afford a pair of expensive shoes, maybe you can pay a bit more than you're already paying.
Originally, the sort of retail price on them wasn't that high, but I think the reason why they were seen as cool and sort of a must-have is partly because of the inflated price, because they were seen as exclusive, right? So the price of the shoes, I think, is what made them cool, because that was what added the exclusivity. If you could just walk into any shop and buy them, I don't know if anyone would think I mean, you can walk into a store now and just buy a pair of Jordans, and it's kind of like no one really cares anymore, right?
Yes.
But everyone cared about it because they were so hard to get. Right. And so I think, in a way, that's slightly what made them cool. There'll be some sneakerheads out there that are like purists that will hate that. Right. But I think the price is what made them cool, and obviously I'm biased.
Yeah. So Ed, how do you build a reselling business from nothing?
Well, so we didn't have any money to begin with. So I remember at the beginning buying like 3 pairs of shoes, spending like 500 odd quid and going, wow, I'm like, I'm a big dog now. And essentially what ended up happening was, as we sort of got into the sort of botting software world, there were people in there that would basically give you money to run shoes for them, and then you'd split the profit with them, because we had the software and other people had the money. And then over time, sort of half of the profit of stuff, you would then have enough money to actually run it yourself, right? After like 12 months. So we didn't have, there was a group of about 12 of us. I'm still mates with pretty much all of them. And some of them have got really good businesses now. Like pretty much everyone that used to be in that botting world is either quite high up in some corporate job or running their own business doing really well, which is an interesting thing.
And then what did you do with the stock?
So initially we had to kind of deal with it ourselves, which was okay because you're talking like 10 pairs in the UK. Whereas eventually when you're talking about hundreds of pairs in different countries, you start thinking, this is going to get quite interesting. So, I mean, at the beginning we had friends of friends of friends that like no one had ever met, that we were just sending like 100 pairs of shoes to their house, kind of hoping that they weren't going to go missing, which is obviously not entirely the most, it's not entirely the smartest thing to do, right? But they were people that knew people that knew people, so we were kind of like, it's fine.
When you notice all your friends wearing those pair of shoes, when you're hanging on something sleeked.
Yeah, so, I'm sure there were pairs that went missing every now and again. But, like I've got a stupid amount of trainers that I don't really ever wear. Eventually it became, there were big marketplaces in the space that were growing at the time, and there was a big battle for getting the actual shoes, because it was essentially whoever had the shoes would get the clients, in terms of the sort of marketplaces that were actually selling the shoes on for resale. And so eventually it got to the point where we were just shipping it straight to these big companies that would then just take the stock and just essentially instantly liquidate them for us.
So you were at home without finishing school, without any sort of plan for university or anything like that, or no job offers, and so you sort of just naturally drifted into what you were doing anyway.
Yeah, I was never going to go to uni. It was never I just had no interest. But I had an apprenticeship lined up because that was sort of the path, right? That got dragged out from underneath me, and then I just kind of started selling shoes. I mean, I was selling some just to make money whilst at school. There were loads of people that did that. And it just went, we can do this. If we do this on scale, then we're fine. And then just had to figure out how to get the scale. But there was no big moment of, wow, this is a business. It was just kind of kind of just get on with life.
That's probably a very nice way to start a business. Most people sit down and go, I'm going to start a business. Yeah. But you actually just drifted into it, and then it sort of became more and more successful.
Yeah, and as shoes sort of not died off, but became less of a massive market, we sort of just ended up pivoting into what we do now. But as I said, there was no big epiphany moment, right?
So with the PlayStations, did you say Sony actually contacted you to get PlayStations?
No.
The footballers contacted you to get PlayStations.
So there's a games company that does a lot with footballers. That my understanding is that Sony offered them a bunch of PlayStations to give to footballers. That then they couldn't give as many as they thought they could. Then that company ended up in a bit of a problem because they'd promised loads of famous, high-profile people PlayStations that then couldn't get them. And so then we ended up selling PlayStations to that games company to give to the footballers. So it was you could have that as a headline.
Was that, yes. Was that, so there was maybe a bit of luck, I mean, you obviously spotted PlayStations as something that were in demand and might be a shortage of.
Yeah, everyone kind of could see PlayStations being, because there was a chip shortage and all that sort of stuff, so people could see PlayStations being hard to come by. There was a huge amount of luck in terms of the person from the video games company finding us and knowing that we had the PlayStations, because that was through like 5 people disconnected and someone going, I think they might have 1 or 2, and we had quite a few. And so there's a huge amount of luck in quite a lot of the things that kind of led me to where I am now, most of it being people just giving us a chance.
Tell me about some of your more interesting requests. I think there's something about flying cats and dogs on a private plane.
Yeah, so we had a client that was moving from London to Ibiza. They had, I think it was 7 rare cats and 1 pit bull thing. And we basically, they didn't want to put them in the hold, which is quite normal for people with pets and completely understandable. So they wanted to do a private jet from London to Ibiza to move all of the animals there and a bunch of their luggage. I think it was like 200 kilos of luggage. So we basically chartered a plane, put all the animals on there. They had to fly to Barcelona first because Ibiza is not a port of entry for animals. I mean, the stuff we learn is so rogue and random. So we were dealing with Spanish authorities to import the animals to Ibiza. So they had to fly to Barcelona, then from Barcelona to Ibiza because Barcelona is a port of entry. So we've had some funny requests, and we've learned stuff I never thought I never thought I'd know about the intricacies of importing animals into Barcelona or Spain, and that you can't do it into Ibiza.
And do you have to sort of sample a lot of this stuff yourself? Like, do you go on some of the planes and you meet some of the cats and the dogs and have look at the watches and try stuff out? Yeah, look, most people would probably look at my lifestyle and go, "That's crazy." I mean, I don't. I've kind of got desensitized to it. I mean, I've been to Bahrain with the royal family and been looked after there. I've been to, we fly private a decent amount, normally on empty legs. But, for me, it's just kind of the job now. I mean, for me, like, flying private is not, it's not that different. Obviously, you don't have to go through an airport, which is actually the main thing. Sitting on the plane is no difference, really. It's more the not having to go through a whole airport, right? I was lucky enough once to have a friend who had a private plane, flew me with other people to India, which was a bit. It sort of felt a little bit obscene in a way because we went and saw the Taj Mahal, and in India, which is a lot of struggling people there, and we were arriving in this private plane. But I remember thinking halfway there that actually it's more comfortable and commercial because it's a fairly small plane. If you've got a long trip, it's actually more fun to fly, more comfortable to fly on a commercial plane.
I mean, most people do it, I think, because they don't have to go through an airport. Obviously, you get people that do it just to get the Instagram photo, which is fine, fair enough. But most people that are flying a lot do it just to save time. I mean, if you've got a meeting in Paris and a meeting in San Remo and a meeting in wherever, all in the same day, and you're flying private, you can literally just hop. And you can just get straight on a plane, and so it's much more of a time save. I think the people that are doing it a lot more than going on a holiday sort of thing.
Yeah, and your early market was young people, I guess, wealthy footballers, well-paid footballers.
Yeah, so we had I mean, our sort of starting point was a few quite large YouTubers and quite a few young footballers. And then we just over time, through the most random of occurrences, picked up sort of traditional money, if you will. I mean, not traditional in the sense of like, landowners, but more like 30-year-olds that had started and sold businesses. And I picked up clients from the weirdest of places where you just go, that makes literally no sense. And being introduced to people that you kind of go, that can't be right. So,
can you give us an example? Well, no names, I guess, but can you give us an example?
Yeah, I mean, look, we had, one of our best customers, who was the guy that gave us a proper good go and was our first sort of into private aviation, I met randomly at a YouTube charity football match. Didn't really know who he was. He just reached out to us on Instagram after it. He's still a client to this day. He spent a decent chunk with us. Probably our third largest customer now still. And I just randomly bumped into him at a charity match when I was still selling shoes. And that was kind of, they've exited their business for multiple hundreds of millions before they were 30. I had no idea who he was, just ended up sort of speaking. I think I first went to him for a bit of advice on stuff, and then he went, "Oh, can you get me all these watches?" And I remember at the time I just didn't have the money to actually do the deal, and he just went, "Oh, here's the money, just take it." And I was like, "You never even met me really, but you've sent me like 100 grand." I was just blatantly honest with him. I said, "Look, I don't have the money to do this. Can you kind of give me a few weeks," sort of thing.
Well, I suppose someone's got to take a risk. If you go and buy all the watches and he doesn't pay up, then you're on the hook. So
yeah, but you normally take a deposit and all that. But we just didn't have the money at the time, and I just was blatantly honest with him and just said, "Look, can you give me?" Because we had another order that had come in from a big YouTuber, and I just said, "Look, we blatantly honest, we don't have the money," and he just went, "Oh, here it is." And traditionally, you're used to the sort of entrepreneur taking the risk, but at that point, it was just
the customer taking the risk.
Well, it was a customer that I don't know if at that point I'd actually met him. I think I must have met him once by then. But the thing I found is that people are actually very sort of open to helping, not in terms of like here's money to invest, but just in terms of if they can do something that will they can see will help you take that next step forward, they will do it, especially if they've maybe been on that journey themselves.
And what about the financial side? I mean, can you say what sort of margin you charge, and do you pay someone like the agent who's between you and the football players? Do you pay commissions, and how much do you charge on top of what you're obtaining?
So our model is very different to the sort of traditional concierge model. So we have no membership fees, and everything we do ourselves. So a lot of concierges, what they do is they will, if you call them up and go, "I want a jet from London to Paris," what they do is they will then call a separate broker. So they're obviously adding a margin for themselves, adding a margin for the broker. So you've got a middleman to a middleman, and obviously then you're sort of playing a game of speaking to someone. With us, we're direct, so we can decide the margin entirely based off of where we think the market dictates it is. So we have no set margin, because our thing is always making sure that our customers are getting the best price that they can be. So we will always try and be slightly below the market price on something. So if you're, for example, if we say you come to me and you want a watch, we will make sure that we're the cheapest on the market. And if that means we're only going to make 500 quid on a 50 grand watch, it makes no difference to us. Our thing is always about making sure you're getting a deal. So there are times where you might ask me for a watch, we've got another client selling one, so we can buy from a client and sell to a client. Then obviously we make a higher margin because you're sort of buying at slightly above trade price, but you're still buying cheaper than you would be, and then obviously we have a higher margin. So we have no fixed margin. The same way someone's flying private for the first time, we want to make sure that they're getting a good deal on the market so that they then take the flight, do it, and then it's one of those things where once you get a taste for it, you kind of get used to it. So we will always try and be the cheapest option for people.
So you're more about the customer than the short-term margin.
Yeah,
you want to keep the customer.
100%. I want customers for 10, 20, 30 years, especially in that upper bracket. And we've never lost a customer. So we're not. Our thing is looking at that long-term thing. So we might make less, being blatantly honest, we might make less per flight, but we might be doing a flight, a villa, a yacht, a chef, some security, a club booking. So we're doing transfers. We're doing 10 different things in one holiday. So we might make more across the whole holiday, but per item, we will probably be making less. So as a percentage, our margin might not be that high, but across everything, it all adds up because it's 1 week holiday, but there's 20 different things we're doing in there, which other people aren't doing. So I mean, we've done all kind. We've moved like 7 rare Persian cats on private jets for someone that was moving to Ibiza. We're used to doing anything and everything.
I mean, it's been a pretty extraordinary, pretty rapid growth for a new company, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so we're doubling turnover every 2 years at the moment. So we're slacking a bit, but we've got some interesting plans where I want to be trying to double every year, but a year ago I had one employee, and now we're on 7. Probably by the end of this year we'll be up to, I don't know, 10 or 11 maybe. So
it actually went along, relatively slowly, for where you are now, and then it sort of did the hockey stick. It suddenly went up rapidly, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was an element of no one really tells you what to do. So there was definitely an element of, how do you build out a team? How do you, like, no one's like, oh yeah, you hire people by doing X, right? It's very like...
Could have asked me. I mean, that's what I tell people. That's what we're here for. You watch shows like this.
Well, exactly.
But no one's going to tell you unless but I mean, I suppose that's the same for all entrepreneurs, isn't it? I mean, it's a lot of self-discovery and mistakes. And you've been pretty clever in what you've done. But I find most of business is common sense. I mean, there's no real, you can read a textbook if you like. But it's just like life in a way, isn't it? I mean, you try not to be silly, you try not to spend too much money, and you try to be nice to people.
Yeah.
It's a lot of common sense and decency.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been a lot of gut feel along the way of kind of maybe we should hire people now. And there's also been, there's been 2 people I've employed where it definitely wasn't the right time in terms of we didn't have the money to do it, but they were the right people, and you kind of go, I don't want to necessarily lose these people to somewhere else, so you take them in.
So you grab good people when you see them?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is the person I offered a job to yesterday and we've agreed on. It's exactly one of those situations where you kind of go, this is not entirely the role we were looking for, but you seem quite good and actually would be quite useful, and we can build out that stuff, so let's just go with it.
That's a good point. So, grab good people when you've got them. Are you saying that the people that are in your industry are hard to find, or can just about anybody, sell an expensive watch?
Well, so I've hired no one from within the industry. I think a lot of it is more down to character. I would much rather hire someone that I can trust explicitly and can teach the other stuff to, rather than someone that's an amazing salesperson but you can't trust.
So trust is number one before sales experience. Yeah,
100%. And I think sales, for me, sales is one of those things you either get or you don't. I don't think you can teach sales. So if someone can sell, they just sort of can. Yes, there's some learning points where don't say that, do say this. This is a situation with this, but there's no. You can't take someone that just can't sell and teach them sales. I don't think, at least from what I can tell.
And I suppose for your customer base, you'd know what customers like. Mm-hmm. So if someone says, I want to sell this expensive watch, you know on your books you've got someone who likes collecting watches. So so it's not such a hard sale in that case. It's really just ringing up a collector and saying, would you like this one?
Well, I mean, people won't just buy anything, right? I mean, and also literally all of our customers love a deal, right? So it's got to be at the right price. You might have someone with 50 watches, but they're still going to be very particular about which watches they like. Like I wouldn't wear a rose gold watch, someone else might. But so you still have to pick and choose. There's still some sales in there. I mean, most of sales in what we do is not, here's a watch, it's got an amazing dial, it's whatever. It's much more along the lines of build a relationship with that person, and then they will trust you, and then that's how you sell to them. There's no, we never sell a specific thing of wow, this is the nicest diamond on the planet. It is much more about building out the relationship. I think that's sometimes what people miss, is it's not all about the product. I think nowadays, especially with social media, it's all about, let me sell this product in the coolest way. In our market, it is much more, let me build trust with and rapport with my client, let me understand what they like, and then you instantly know what to offer them.
And do you have much of a social media presence? Is that how you market your business?
No, most of, if not all of our business is word of mouth. Social media is something that we're growing. We've got a few clients off the back of it, especially among the sort of football crowd. I think social media is one of those things that now you just have to have. Obviously, there's certain things that we can and can't show on social media, but you have to. It's almost like having a website now. I think if you don't have a social media, it's a bit weird now. So it's something we've had to grow. I mean, the whole business has been entirely grown off the back of word of mouth up until now.
Right.
What happens?
And as a young entrepreneur, hiring people, being a boss for the first time. I was a young director of a bank in when I was young. And learning to manage people, you barely know how to manage yourself. I'm not, but it's a skill, isn't it? So, you suddenly got someone working for you. And so it's not just the managing of people, holidays and all those sort of things that you deal with that they want, but it's also as a business changes, suddenly you've gone from. Often entrepreneurs get pulled away from the path that they like and then what they're good at, which might have been for you, which is getting on the phone and doing a deal. And suddenly you're worrying about signing a lease or contracts and all the stuff which isn't that much fun, and you may not be as good at as you were with the original thing that you were doing. So entrepreneurs can get pulled away from the fun bit and pushed into the sort of the admin side. So on those two things, how have you found managing people and dealing with company admin?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I relate with. I'm going through a lease at the moment, and the lawyers are like, it's going to take 5 weeks. It's like, why is it taking 5 weeks? But no, it's definitely, for about 12 months, it's definitely something that I struggled with, right? Because it is very much, you just learn as it's kind of happening. You don't really have again, no one tells you what the hell to do. So there's definitely a year or so where I became very in like employment contracts and all of that sort of stuff that, like, realistically, as you said, an entrepreneur doing that is a complete and utter waste of time, because I'm good at being in a room with people, networking, selling. That's my thing. And when you're sitting there doing accounts, it's like, it's just isn't, one, it's not fun, but also it's just not a good use of my time. So that's why building out the team now has become, let's get some structure in place. Let's sort of pull the things away from me that I shouldn't be doing, and let me focus on partnerships and stuff like that, like with banks, etc. So you figure it out. Yeah. Hiring people, you kind of just get on with it and figure it out, and you kind of learn how to deal with people. How do you make sure everyone's doing stuff all the time? Because obviously as an entrepreneur as well, you're like, well, you should just be doing this 24 hours every day, right? Whereas actually that's not how an employee, you're not going to get a team that necessarily does that. Obviously, my team actually are quite good at answering whenever, but it's still my baby, if you will, right? So I will literally work 24/7 on it, and some people might go, I want to go for drinks with my mates, like, relax a bit, right? And so there's always going to be that element where it's always going to be different to you, even if you've got employees with equity. It's still going to be a bit different, because I've done it for 6 years, which is horrible to say. But
when you look back at how you started and when you started, you go, oh my God, there was stuff I know now which I could have told myself 5 years ago.
I believe in just kind of it is what it is, right? So yes, there's stuff that I know now that if I'd known when COVID started, I probably would have made an inordinate amount of money, right? But there's never a time I really go, oh, I wish I'd done that.
I don't mean to beat yourself up. I'm probably trying to extract out of you, if there's other Eds out there watching who are 21 and starting a business, what sort of takeaways would you have for them?
I would say you just need to get on and do it. I speak to so many people that I went to school with that, like, I was thinking of starting a business doing this, and they've got like a 20-page plan and, like, multiple different logos they can choose from and all that. When I started, I didn't know what the business was called. I didn't have a logo. I just went, I can sell some shoes and make a bit of money. And you just have to kind of crack on and do it. And I think people think too much, which I know is just a bit of a sort of weird thing to say, but you just have to get on and do it.
Well, there's what I call the discovery cost, where you start a business and it's a research project. You want to find out quickly as possible if it's viable, and there's a concept of minimum viable product. So but you want to find out as quickly as possible if the business can actually work. And wasting time doing logos and signing leases and all that kind of stuff doesn't really help you do that research. But you had the luxury, luxury in the luxury market, but you had the luxury of finding out relatively inexpensively that there was demand for these sort of concierge services.
Yeah, I mean, the concierge bit actually we sort of fell into, right, after the shoes and after the PlayStation, because at that point we were just focused on buy product, sell product for more, right? That was, which is not exactly a complicated. I mean, it's not a complicated business model, right? And all the sort of concierge stuff came sort of 3 years in. So it was not we didn't really start with that. I mean, the thing is, I think almost all businesses, you can find out whether they're going to work very inexpensively. I think when you see, I've invested in one or two things with SEIS and EIS, and they're,
which are tax breaks.
Yeah, which are tax breaks, and the those businesses sort of proved a point and then went and raised. Not, I've got this brilliant idea, let me go and raise like 5 million quid and see if it works, right? Which I see quite a lot, and you just go, just start doing something and then just prove that you can do it on a tiny scale and then go and raise the money. Don't just go, let's just throw loads of money at it and see if it works, right?
A slight proof point's not a bad idea.
Yeah, exactly. But you probably see it as well, right? I just always think people just need to crack on and kind of just start and see. You can always do something ridiculously cheap. You could always prove something somehow. And if you can't, then I'd argue maybe it's not the right thing for you.
How many clients do you have now?
I mean, in our current CRM, we've got 700 people, but one of the things we're building out is a fully integrated end-to-end system for dealing with ultra high net worths in the back end of the business. So there's a lot of AI stuff going into that. And it's all built in-house. So we're building two businesses in one. We've got the sort of front end of the business, and then we've got the back end, which is this sort of CRM tech play. And our front end of the business is the proof of concept for the back end, if you will. So
to communicate, can you communicate with all 700 if you get a product in that you think, or do you do it sort of one by one, or do you have some sort of newsletter where you put up this week's hot items or something?
So at the moment it is all one by one, very personalised, very custom. That's why we're building out a new system that will assist with that in the back end in terms of predicting who will like what, when they're going to go on holiday, based off of previous spends of those people, their family, etc.
Well, we're not that far off from AI being able to just ring up and talk to people as a human being does.
Well, I mean, you can already do that. So I mean, look, we I don't want to say too much about some of the stuff we're working on, but we're working on a lot of stuff. We will always have a human, right? I never want to have it to the point where an AI is ringing someone up. But you can definitely have AI suggesting who to send stuff to, when people are going on holiday, etc. Like with footballers, there's international breaks, all of that sort of stuff. We can definitely reach out. We can automate that stuff. But I never want to make it you're just speaking to an AI, because no one likes it.
It's a people business. You had a great piece of coverage in the Telegraph, and I read it, and it was really good. And then I got to the comments, and I was just amazed by how negative some of the comments were.
I think that as a country, or as a civilization, we need to be much more supportive of people trying new things, and when they make it, continuing to support them. I mean, I don't think I've made it, right? I'm still on the path. God knows what will happen between now and the next 12 months, 24 months, right? But you have to, I think we need a culture much more supportive of people. I think as soon as people see someone doing relatively well, or they perceive them to be doing well, because you never know what's happening behind the scenes as well, right? There just seems to be a culture of people wanting to put it down. And I think that, one, I don't really understand why. And two, I just think it's quite toxic, because at the end of the day, the economy as a whole is pushed by small businesses, and everyone wants people to start small businesses, but everyone wants people to start a coffee shop, right? Mm-hmm. But if you go and start something that is perceived to be, not liked, right, or in a market that is slightly different, then people seem to not like your small business, right?
If it's for wealthy people.
Well, there's that, but I've got friends that have had similar things, and people don't like it in all kinds of different industries, and you if you want to pick and choose which businesses you support, that's absolutely fine. But I don't think that having a culture where you see someone doing relatively well and you want to try and put them down, I just don't really understand I don't really understand what people get from that. I mean, I actually genuinely don't care at all what people think.
I love stories of young successful people starting businesses. I think it's fantastic, and the more we encourage it, the UK needs more of it, doesn't it? I mean, the US is
Agreed.
thriving with entrepreneurialism, and so is China in its own way. I mean, the UK needs people spotting opportunities, and you're talking about AI, you're talking about recruitment, you're talking about marketing around the world and contacts around the world. It was fantastic, and then employing people. So bring it on.
Yeah, I just think. I think you need to encourage people to start a business, and I think in the UK currently it's got to the stage where you've got to be slightly nuts to start a business. Like, the cost of hiring people is so high, the cost of doing anything is so high. I mean, I think in order to make it work now in the UK, you've got to get quite lucky. Like, we got lucky with being introduced to the right people just randomly at all kinds of places. So there's an element of luck, I think, in any business. I think most people that are being honest would say that anyone that's made it, there's definitely been some luck elements. But you have to make it where people want to start a business. And when you look at it and people are going, I want to start a business, but I want to move to X, then there's clearly something wrong with a culture there. If you've got loads of entrepreneurial people and they're saying, I want to start a business, but I only want to start a business if I leave, then that to me seems counterintuitive.
It has been really interesting talking to a young entrepreneur and what you're doing. I mean, I think it's just about interesting for everybody to hear some of the things that people want around the world and how the world is changing. How businesses are changing, how you're hiring people, and what you've learned at such a young age. So it's been fantastic having you on the boardroom. Thanks for coming.
I appreciate it. Thank you.